Ukraine is secretly making a dirty bomb. After a massive Russian missile attack on Ukrainian cities, diplomats flee Kyiv. The window of opportunity to start a full-scale war was opened for Russia because of the attack on the Crimean bridge. My name is Vadym Miskyi. In the next 10 minutes, I will tell you about the most impressive examples of Kremlin propaganda, as well as about some international media that use unverified sources of information. Detector Media did all the dirty fact-checking work for you. We have separated real facts from those of a parallel universe. Here we go. Another nonsense by Russian propagandists. Where is the logic behind the Kremlin's approach? Ukrainian officials are claimed to be asked not to publish evidence of the damage from missile strikes to hide the truth about the October 10th tragedy. This claim, made after the Kremlin's massive missile attack, was spread on Telegram channels controlled by Russian special services. Why should Ukraine hide the war crimes of the Russian Federation? In their stories, propagandists claim that the president's office asked Ukrainians not to publish photos of the destruction, and the security service of Ukraine wrote to the administrators of social media groups demanding to delete photo evidence. In fact, it is recommended not to share photos and videos of missile strikes immediately after the impact to avoid helping the enemy to aim, not to hide the destruction. Information about the missile strikes, as well as photos and videos of the tragic events, gradually appeared on the internet and on official government websites. The goal of propagandists is to convince Ukrainians that the authorities are lying to them. Instead of solving the problem, they pretend that nothing terrible is happening. Narratives like this undermine the leadership of Ukraine.
We saw yesterday that a residential area of the city of Zaporizhia, a major city in the south of the country, very close to the front lines, was hit. More than a dozen.
Okay, Hugo Bashega there, our correspondent in Kyiv, obviously for obvious reasons taking cover at that point.
The Ukrainian authorities are not to blame for what happened. Russia is which doesn't stop shelling civilians. Ukraine needs this photo evidence for the world to know about Russia's terrorist acts, and also for The Hague.
I think what we saw yesterday is actually a sign of weakness, because the reality is that they are not able to make progress on the battlefield. Russia is actually losing on the battlefield. They are giving up territory because they don't have the capabilities to stop the Ukrainian forces making advances. So the way they are able to then respond is by indiscriminate attacks on Ukrainian cities, hitting civilians, critical infrastructure, and of course this causes suffering, damage on Ukraine. But in many ways, it actually reflects the lack of alternatives for President Putin.
The window of opportunity to start a full-scale war was opened for Russia because of the attack on the Crimean bridge. This manipulation was spread on anonymous propaganda Telegram channels after the explosion on this strategic structure. However, the propagandists did not indicate which floor this so-called window is on. It seems that the floor is high enough to commit political suicide.
Pleading ignorance and offering a denial of sorts for that spectacular attack on a bridge leading into Crimea.
Propagandists even drew a historical parallel about how the United States started the war in Afghanistan in response to the terrorist attack in September 2001. This way, the propagandists claim that Ukraine is a state that is terrorizing Russia and Russian infrastructure facilities. However, there is no official confirmation that Ukraine has anything to do with the bridge incident. Such messages have another function – intimidation. Propagandists demonstrate that Russia is not fighting at full strength and Ukraine is provoking aggression. By portraying Ukraine as a terrorist state, the Kremlin propaganda shifts the responsibility for its crimes and the start of the war. However, these manipulations have the opposite effect. The West has increased its military assistance to Ukraine.
Ukraine's forces have used systems like HIMARS to change the dynamics of the war that Putin started. And that's helped Ukrainian forces seize the initiative during their counteroffensive. So we'll continue to rush in the capabilities to help Ukraine in the current fight. And I commend the contact group members who have moved heaven and earth to get weapons and equipment into the hands of the Ukrainian forces.
A diplomatic high-speed marathon with the finishing line in Warsaw. Embassies of EU countries are claimed to have started urgent evacuation from Kyiv. This fake news was spread by Russian propagandists. Allegedly, diplomats are being relocated to Poland. This is not true. German ambassador to Ukraine, Anka Feldgusen, said that during the shelling she was in the shelter together with hundreds of Kyiv residents. I quote, "With hundreds of Kyiv residents in the shelter, I am struck by the calm that reigns here while Russia is shelling playgrounds in the center of Kyiv," she tweeted. According to US Ambassador to Ukraine Bridget Brink, American diplomats working at the embassy in Kyiv are in safety after another wave of Russian strikes on civilian targets in Ukraine. In a tweet, she said, "Thank you to all who have responded and are working to keep us safe. My heart breaks for those affected in Kyiv and across Ukraine." End of quote. British Ambassador Melinda Simmons is also in Kyiv. "Hits on Kyiv city center. UK staff are fine. My thoughts right now with those injured. Huge thankfulness for Ukrainian first responders," she wrote. Following the massive missile attacks, Russian propaganda spread a fake about the evacuation of embassies to demonstrate that living in Ukraine is extremely dangerous. By doing this, propagandists aim to cause stress and anxiety for as many Ukrainians as possible. Every day it is more and more difficult for Russian propagandists to invent new fakes, so they just upgrade the old ones. At the end of October, the Russian media once again began spreading the message that the Ukrainian authorities are supposedly planning to detonate a dirty bomb on Ukrainian territory. They claim that the device is being built under the Western supervision. The Eastern Mining and Processing Plant, located in the Dnipropetrovsk region, and the Kyiv Institute for Nuclear Research are involved in this. To impress the consumers of this pseudo-news content, Russian Defense Minister Shoigu called at least 3 defense ministers of NATO countries, France, Turkey and Britain, to tell the tale of this so-called Ukrainian dirty bomb. He said that in case of successful implementation of the provocation, Ukraine plans to accuse the Kremlin of using weapons of mass destruction. According to a report by the US Institute for the Study of War, Shoigu was likely trying to slow down or stop Western military aid to Ukraine. A dirty bomb is a type of radiological device in which a conventional explosive like a dynamite is combined with radioactive material. These bombs do not release enough radiation to kill people or cause serious illness. However, the very explosion of such a bomb can cause fear and panic, contaminate an area and require potentially expensive cleanup. Such bombs are considered a weapon of terrorist groups rather than armies. Russian media started spreading a fake about Ukraine's alleged preparation to manufacture a dirty bomb 2 days after the outbreak of war on February 26. Minister for Foreign Affairs of Ukraine Dmytro Kuleba gave a harsh response to this slander. The Center for Countering Disinformation says that Ukraine cannot get uranium from anywhere. Plutonium was produced by the Chernobyl NPP reactors, but such operations have been stopped for a quarter of a century, so the statements about the creation of a dirty bomb are unfounded. Instead, the Kremlin systematically employs nuclear blackmail. Josep Borrell answered harshly to Putin.
And Putin is saying that he's not bluffing. Well, he cannot afford bluffing. He cannot afford bluffing. And it has to be clear that the people who support Ukraine and the European Union and the member states and the US and NATO are not bluffing neither. And any nuclear attack against Ukraine will create an answer. Not a nuclear answer, but such a powerful answer from the military side that the Russian army will be inoculated.
So let's just take that a step further. What would that look like, and how broad would the scope be?
It would depend. What I would recommend is, if we could do it, if we could designate the military unit that conducted the attack to retaliate directly against that unit and destroy it. So that shows that there's a serious cost, that using nuclear weapons is unacceptable. But it also shows that this isn't the United States joining the war. This isn't an attack on Moscow.
I see. So very surgical, basically.
Very surgical.
Final question. How important is it for the Russian president to feel that he himself is a legitimate military target if he uses a nuclear weapon?
I think that is something that would help our deterrent. If Putin feels that if he uses nuclear weapons, his own life, his own regime might be at risk, that would contribute to deterrence. We've already seen that he doesn't care about the lives of civilians, he doesn't care about the lives of his own soldiers, but I do think that he still cares about his own life and his own control on power.
Nevertheless, I and Detector Media team stay optimistic. Ukraine will win. Stay with us to learn how not to fall for the Kremlin's propaganda. See you soon.